Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Balance and Empathy Show. We have an amazing topic to talk about today. First of all, to our viewers, if you are watching, please let us know where are you watching from, which part of the world, which country. Please put it in the comments because we are very curious. So, as I said, today we're having a very interesting topic to talk about, and I think you can all relate. We are talking about mentally healthy, inclusive work cultures. Now, how important is this, right? When you have a job, to have such a healthy environment to work with. I am here today with Ashok, the founder of the Empathy Clinic from Canada. And also we have Mayton Panella. I will shortly introduce you. Mayton is a business psychologist and executive coach who is supporting organizations for healthy, inclusive cultures. And we also have Caroline Ribeiro Nelson, also a psychotherapist who works in diverse mental health, supporting organizations in creating healthy, inclusive cultures. Now, ladies, would you kindly shortly tell a little bit about yourself? And then we will dive right into the topic. Caroline, if you would like to start.
Thank you, Tisha. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm also a consultant and trainer, and I've been working in mental health and wellbeing field for 30 years now. So I started when I was very young, and I connected really with mental health and well-being by understanding that deep connection because I'm actually an identical twin. So being connected and empathy and supporting others was a really important part of my development and how I understand people. So I'm working now with organizations developing diverse and healthy inclusive work cultures.
That's fantastic, Caroline. Well, I'm not an identical twin myself. I know Ashok is, so he can definitely relate to this. Thank you for your introduction. Now, Mayton, would you kindly introduce yourself shortly to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Most welcome.
Well, my name is Maiten. I'm also a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and a coach, and I've been doing this year will be 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fantastic path to evolve and connect and be in contact with people. I've been living in 4 countries now. Now I'm based in beautiful sunny Spain. I'm originally from Italy, but I have lived in Australia, in Argentina for so many years. And that connection, being in touch with people from all over the world, gave me the dimension of certain things that are fundamental for our life, which are respect, understanding, and honoring who we are, each one of us. Thank you so much for having us today.
Very welcome. Very welcome. Now, to dive right into the topic, I'm actually so proud to have you both here because you have together a ton of experience and expertise to talk about this topic. So, for me, myself, I have worked for over 25 years, mainly in local government organizations, first as an employee, now as a interim manager, project manager, helping them. And what I've noticed is that a mentally healthy, inclusive work culture, that's actually one of the most important elements in working somewhere. Because when that's not, if you don't have that in your current job, you become unhealthy, and then mostly people want to leave, because not any salary can actually weigh up to feeling happy at work. Um, and yeah, that's just one of my foundings. And I think, Caroline, if you can relate, what is your experience in this? How important is this for people in the workplace?
Yeah, it's for me, it's totally essential. And my perspective from diverse mental health and well-being is that there is a strong connection between mental health and our experience in terms of our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So often it's seen this side mental health, this side DEI. But in fact, when you look at how we experience the world, we don't experience it separately, it's together. And when we're looking at the experience of women, people from a different ethnic background, black, brown, mixed race, people for example, with a disability, the older population, a different religion or class, they experience things in our society that impact severely on their mental health. And we're talking about sexism, racism, discrimination, violence, and abuse. And this has a deep impact on our mental health. So we need to be looking at those and understanding those very much together and addressing those inside the workplace as well as outside the workplace, because we don't leave ourselves outside the workplace. We take our experiences into the workplace. And also what we experience in there is actually perpetrated. So we see harassment, bullying, discrimination, violence, abuse, inequity, exclusion within the workplace. So we need to be looking at that together. So when we are thinking about our mental health and well-being, and we're hearing all about that, aren't we now, in organizations? They're talking all the time about diversity, equity, inclusion, mental health, well-being, and they're actually not really looking at the reality of people's lived experience. And so it's important that when we're developing strategies within the workplace, we're understanding what that means. What are organizations in the workplace doing to address those particular issues? And if we can address those issues, then it means that we can support people's mental health and well-being. We can improve diversity, equity, inclusion, and we can make it healthier and more inclusive. So that's what my focus is, and that's what is so important for us to be focusing on.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Ashok, I see you nodding a lot. You have some input, I think. Go ahead.
Well, I've been doing this a long time. It's over 36 years, and when I started in medicine, there was a huge thrust on physical well-being. So if you think about the workplace environments that we've all known about, there's a lot of interest in making sure that the workplace is physically safe. Just think of a simple situation like a factory. And so there's equipment and people can hurt themselves physically. We haven't quite gotten there with the same sense of interest and concern about people going to the workplace and becoming psychologically injured or socially injured or racially injured or any kind of bias, whether it's unconscious, causing them psychological injury. And what we know is that if someone gets their hand injured at work, everybody can see that. And everyone can see that something needs to be done about that. If somebody gets their heart or their mind injured at work, it might be very hard to see that. And also that person might be silent about that. They might be ashamed for whatever reason and not want to discuss that. And that's why these issues are so vital, that we begin this conversation and make sure that it's as obvious as someone hurting their hand in the workplace.
That's so interesting what you're saying. And I think you're spot on, because exactly like you say, when there is some kind of physical injury, there is a first aid kit, right? And there are people there who have been appointed when there's something wrong with someone, you know what to do, and they get trained for this. But do all workplaces have a first aid kit for mental health? I'm thinking not, because otherwise you wouldn't be an expert in this topic. And I think that's so important. And Maiten, if you would like to respond, what kind of tools do you put in this first aid kit for mental health in the workplace?
And before addressing that, Tisha, something that both Ashok and Caroline mentioned that I'd like to connect with the answer to your question is that these practices that seeing the physicality taken care of and completely denying other aspects of our being is the consequence of something that for many, many, many years we've been thinking about, which is like we are a body without a mind, or without a brain, which is separated from the mind, or we are persons without a soul. If you believe in that, it doesn't matter. The word integration is the word that matters. It's the most important word, because we are wholes. So our wholeness needs to be recognized first, then respected, and then taken care of. So if we still are living in this old divided world where we pay attention to some aspects of our being in detrimental to the others, well, we are in big problems. And this is what we are seeing all the time. And this is why, to your question, Tisha, answering that, one of the most important things to me, and to me this is like the basic of everything, it is awareness. Awareness and self-awareness, both. If you cultivate that, you can cultivate empathy, because first you connect to yourself, to who you are as a whole, also integrating mind and body. Because, you know, if you hurt your hand, you are also hurting your brain. Your neurons are going to respond. Your body is going to respond, and this is going to have an impact also in your emotionality. It's all interconnected. There are no divisions. So if we embrace that and we go a little bit out of our comfort zone and we explore ourselves without judgment, like explorers, to me, this and mindfulness are the basics of any mental kit.
Beautifully said, Matan.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Matan, the key is we need to start with empathy. We need to be able to connect to others in a way that understands their experience in the world and the way that they react and what they particularly need. And when we're talking about experiences in the workplace and what can the workplace do to support others develop well, then it really is about an integrated approach. And we need to ask, what are we doing to support people's mental health and well-being that incorporates their diverse background and experience? And we hear this buzzword, bring your whole self to work, right? What does that mean, bring your whole self to work? You're asking people to share their inner experience. You're asking them to disclose about their difference in terms of their gender, their sexual identity, their different ability, their religion. And you're asking them to talk about and share what their needs are in terms of being well and being healthy, mentally healthy. But you're not creating, a lot of organizations are not creating the space in order for people to do that. They're not creating psychological safety, which means that people don't feel judged, they're not penalized, and they have appropriate support structures. And that needs to be in place. Organizations, they do need to be looking at what are the structures, what are the attitudes, what are the values, what are the systems that they're putting in place to enable people to be able to share their experience in a way that's going to be appropriately supported. So we're seeing a lot of new positions in diversity, equity, and inclusion and mental health and well-being, right, within the workplace. People are saying, yeah, we need this now. But practically, they're not making much headway. And they're not making much headway because they're not looking at the fundamental issues that are impacting people. They're not looking at their lived experience in terms of harassment, bullying, discrimination, sexism, exclusion, inequity. What are they doing about the pay gap? What are they doing about the level of sickness? What are they, when people have to go off sick, the lower productivity? What are they doing about people not feeling that they are being treated in an equitable way, that they're not moving up within the organizations? And how are they dealing specifically and appropriately with their mental health? Because we're seeing now mental health first aid. We've got employee assistance programs, right? And so when somebody talks about they're having and they're struggling with their mental health, organizations point them outside of the organization. They say, go to your employee assistance program, they'll be able to help you. Or they're training people up within the organization to be mental health first aiders, to actually help themselves. So they're saying, actually, you should help yourself. We're going to train you up so you can help yourself. Or they're developing apps within the workplace. So they're sending you to use apps. And they're not actually creating and establishing safe, supportive environments within the workplace. And that's the commitment. And it is a transformation. And I don't think that people are fully understanding what it needs and what it takes to actually shake up the status quo, recreate cultures which are fully inclusive, that allow people to be safe, to truly bring themselves to work, not to be censored, not to be suppressed, to be supported, to be protected, and to be able to fulfill their total potential. And I think that's something that we need to be looking at within the workplace.
I totally agree. Ashok, you have something to say?
Yeah, it is a bit of a problem in the sense that I talk a lot about burnout. And I think sometimes when you go to work as a professional, you're supposed to act professional. And if you're having mental stress or any kind of anxiety, or if you're going through troubles at home, if you're a mother with young children, if you're going through a divorce, all these things, how do you act professional in the workplace? At the same time, you're dealing with all these incredibly complex emotional issues. And Matan used a word that hits my heart very strongly, and that's the word soul. And when I work with people, you can look at people through a very narrow way and look at the problem that they have. Or you can try and look at their soul, because the whole soul is telling a whole story of everything that's occurring to them. And I think sometimes when we're professionals, we're actually led to believe that we need to be quiet about our mental health and these kind of concerns as well. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions about that.
Well, if I can respond, Caroline, what you said really touched my heart too, because often when there is a problem, when someone experiences a problem, whether it's personal or in the, well, let's say in the workplace, it's so true. When someone reports this to their manager, their executive, often they say, okay, you can go to a counselor, you can go to a therapist, right? But if the problem is within the workspace, that system, which is still continuing to create that problem, is still in place, right?
Yes.
When you take one individual out, the system is still there, still continuing, maybe with other people as well, right? And you can take one person out, and that person can benefit from therapy and counseling, of course. I believe that. But then when you put someone back into that system again, there's a big chance that nothing actually will change. So I think that's a very good point that you raised, that really organizations need to be aware of breaking through this cycle. And I would love to hear from either three of you, do you have any tools for organizations? How can they do this? So how can they break this cycle where actually something changes and it doesn't continue to create that dysfunctional work culture?
Absolutely. If I can jump in fact, Caroline has created, she's the founder of a whole system that connects mental health and diversity, equity, and inclusion inside the workplace. So to be able to, through different tools, different ways of approaching all the employees and all the ecosystem, leaders and managers, the culture behind that, and more. So it's a whole, our approach to this is as a whole system, interconnection of pieces, where we create awareness first, then you treat the elements respectfully and trying to understand what is going on to avoid future toxicity. Because, there are all different elements and levels of aggression, because some are really blatant. But what about the things that you cannot call off? What about the things that if you are suffering a microaggression, how are you going to denounce something that is hurting you systematically every day of your life, but the person who is perpetrating that first is not aware, second might not be an intentional thing, might be just a consequence of let's call it, I don't know, ignorance or whatever. But what about you? The impact that you're suffering, the trauma that you might be suffering, the consequence in your mental health. So all these things are little parts, like a puzzle. You have a piece here and a piece there, and you have to put them all together as a whole. So the corporates, the whole culture, we need to become aware of what is going on, responsible for ourselves and the people we say we care about.
Exactly.
This is another thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
become really accountable for the people we say all the time that we care about.
Yeah.
And what I think is a very important element, continuing on what you said, Maiten, is safety. Because if you are, you're experiencing something that creates pain for you, right? You need to have a safe environment where you can talk about it. And that means that the management needs to be open, needs to be approachable, and you need to feel that if you talk about this, that you are not judged, right?
Yeah.
That is okay to talk about it. And I think that's an element where many organizations can also improve on.
And one tiny thing to add to that, I think that this is at the level of a corporate, any organization, but also at a private level. We are not used to create space and hold space for whatever it is. Because if we come in contact with whatever it is in the moment we are experiencing it, we can understand it and maybe we can do something about it. But in this culture we live in, we are all doers. We are go, 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 go. So don't time for, never stop, never.
Yeah.
We need to create spaces for reflection, spaces for dialogue, rooms for people to really come in contact, which is a beautiful word.
Yes.
That I love.
Yes. Yeah.
I know that, Caroline.
It's so essential what you both have said, because we're talking about psychological safety, and we're also looking at the stigma that's involved in mental health that has been going on and is deeply ingrained in us from very early on and within cultures about the shame, embarrassment, the kind of judgments that are made around our mental health and well-being, which isn't the same as our physical health and well-being. And we can talk about creating psychological safety, but actually, how do people create that within the workplace? We can talk about don't judge. We can talk about don't penalize, but actually, are people creating that? We can't just say to people, come into the workplace, talk about what's going on, share your experience without people being, as Matan mentioned, respected, appropriately supported, not penalized, not losing out, not being seen as weak or not being seen as worthy or valuable in terms of what they are experiencing. And this is a mindset shift. It really is. It's not just about saying the words. It really is about making that cultural change, belief system, attitudes, and feelings towards our mental health that needs to change in order to make the impact.
Yes.
So
go ahead, Ashok.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, especially in medicine, we're trained to diagnose and treat illnesses after they've happened. And it's so much more beneficial to anticipate these things before they've happened. And you don't put on your seatbelt in your car after you've had a crash. You want to put it on before you get in and start the ignition.
Right.
And I think that especially corporations and businesses, no matter what they're doing, they're going to be much more productive, if the bottom line is how productive they are. If the people that work there feel psychologically safe, or even more, if they feel psychologically empowered by the experience of working there. They don't just feel safety, they feel efficiency. They feel respect for each other, and that empathic connection can actually elevate everybody and everyone that works there.
Yeah.
Matan.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. I loved it. I love it. Oh, sorry, Tisha. You go. Yeah, please.
1 second. Yes, no, just a little thing for the audience, right? We have Himli Nidhal saying, can we find help from you? Well, Himli, I would say if there is a question you have and you want to talk to one of us, please send us a private message on LinkedIn. And then we can always see what we can do. So this is for Himli. And then for the audience, if you have any questions about mentally healthy, inclusive work cultures, if you have a situation or maybe something to share, please put this in the comments. We can show your question to the screen. And maybe your question can help other people too. So just for the audience, Maiten, over to you.
Thank you. Something that Ashok said that is so interesting, because it's true. Our Western medicine is like that. Not all medicine is like that. So this is an important distinction, and we need to incorporate the good elements of every culture inside of something that can work. So in other type of medicines, you have the word prevention as the most important word.
Yeah.
So you can learn. It's like, I don't know, I've been practicing yoga and meditation for my whole life, and that's a wonderful way to connect with your soul, but also wonderful preventive way to prepare your mind and your body for the better. So whatever it happens in the future, you are resilient enough, you are prepared enough. So besides all other kind of benefits, of course, but I think that this inclusion, the word prevention, needs to be included in our vocabulary, in our everyday vocabulary, even though we haven't been prepared for that. So when we are 5, 6, or 7 years old, we are taught math. We are not taught how to breathe. Nevertheless, we can learn. We can learn how to prepare ourselves for whatever it is out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that word, Matan, prevention, is key, because there's a lot that we can do and be put in place to make sure that we don't reach that point of crisis. And I think that we can talk about tools. What are the tools? What are the strategies that people can use to be well and healthy? But it needs to come from a place where people start to value their mental health, that they start making their mental health a priority, and that they feel safe and they feel positive about saying, my mental health matters. I'm going to start investing in my mental health. I'm going to start cutting out those things that make me ill, that drain my energy, that cause stress. And I'm going to invest in attitudes, behaviors, relationships, and circumstances that keep me well. And that is really important, that people feel that they start to do that. They do it with their physical health, and people accept it.
Yes.
But with their mental health, people say that you're just not coping, or you're just being weak, or just get on with it. And our mental health is crucial. I see our mental health as the engine, and our physical as the car. One cannot exist without the other. It cannot function. And so we really need to be investing more in that. And when we look at in terms of diverse mental health, which is what I'm focusing on, and we have to bring that in. We have to look at people's lived experience of hatred, discrimination, violence, abuse that has a deep and ongoing impact on us. It impacts us in every way, in our relationships, in our ability to function, in our happiness, in our fulfillment. And this is something that we really need to incorporate in a very, very deep way, because we can't have full health without that.
I completely agree. And it's like you said, Caroline, if you have personal experiences, some trauma that you have experienced, imagine going to work, taking your trauma, putting it in a closet, and then do your job. Just doesn't work like that. You have that with you. You have that experience with you. You take it with you to work. Or in the other way around, if you have a toxic workplace, and then after work you go home, you take this with you into your personal life. You are stressed, right? You have low energy. You are reaching burnout. Your family suffers too because of that trauma. So you can absolutely not separate those two. Asha, if you would like to respond.
Well, I just came back from a fantastic conference in San Francisco on physician burnout. Now, I've been very interested in burnout in professionals for a long time. But what's interesting is we're actually starting to have conferences with physicians who are not just talking about burnout, but admitting that they've been burnt out. I've been burnt out 3 times. And the issue, and Metan was mentioning this, is that we need to build our individual resilience. But sometimes we also need to look at the culture that the individuals are in. We don't just want to create very, very strong soldiers who don't break in a war that's hopeless.
Yes.
We want to create a culture that's understanding and empathic and safe. So that resilience isn't just the solution. There has to be some attention to the culture that we're all working in, whether it's our home culture, our work culture, or our social culture, because all those things impinge on the wellness of our soul.
Oh, I love that. And sorry, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Mason.
I wanted to add that it's very interesting, this aspect of the culture, because culture should be incorporated always. Again, it's not something that we can take out of the equation. It is impossible to take out of the equation the culture we have been raised into, the culture we are experiencing at the moment. Every aspect of it is influencing us all the time. But there is also something very interesting about the word resilience, because the word resilience takes different connotations depending on the culture. If I'm in America, North America, the United States, resilience is going to have a certain meaning that is not the same in Italy. Certainly is not the same in Argentina, nor the same in Australia, not the same in Portugal. So again, to see resilience as, or any other skill to be developed, as something that can have a certain definition, but needs to take into consideration the whole culture to comprehend it. Because, for example, to me, resilience is not to be a soldier that can withstand all the time, all the headwinds like that. Perfect. Always there.
Yeah.
No, that's not resilience. Oh my God, that's creating a false self. So that it's going to break me eventually. So break me and my culture and my family and of course my workplace. Yeah. Resilience to me is to be able to look at myself, to know my strength, also my vulnerabilities, to make the most out of them, to honor them, and to put them to play whenever I need them. This is resilience. This is my personal definition of resilience. And it varies depending on the culture.
Yeah.
We have a comment coming in from, it says LinkedIn user. I'm sure you have a name, but I see LinkedIn user because I'm probably not connected to you. So I don't know your name, apologies. He says, or she says, our mental health is in danger if the environment is ruled by narcissistic behavior. And this behavior cannot be compromised with positive terms. Asha, could you respond to this comment?
Well, according to me, a narcissist is someone who's incapable of empathizing because their ego is too full of themselves, and so they can't put themselves aside so they can incorporate the experience of somebody else. And the sad truth is that our culture still admire people who are very, very seemingly confident, which is what a lot of narcissistic people typically are. And so they keep getting leadership positions. And this creates this toxic from the top sort of pyramid, and where it's very difficult, I think. But I think narcissism, if it happens in my office, it doesn't last very long, either because they leave or because I actually get a chance to treat them. Usually after about 2 or 3 sessions, I can tell if someone's going to stick with me in therapy, that is. But it's such a big problem because our culture historically keeps admiring some of these individuals and gives them leadership positions.
No, that's so true. But then if you are working in this kind of workplace, what can you do? Because obviously, if that's the situation, you don't have that safe culture. You're not going to your narcissistic manager and tell them how you feel because, well, I think maybe if you try once and then you probably decide you're never doing that again. The outcome mostly isn't that positive for you. It will be positive for them, but not for you. So what can you do in these types of situations? Because that's a cycle, I think, which is hard to break through. Caroline.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
some.
I think it is a huge challenge because, as Ashok said, that a narcissistic character or narcissistic traits can be very domineering and can be very controlling. And there's a sense of insecurity that underlays all of that. But the narcissistic personality wants to control, wants to dominate, does not want to be questioned. And as a manager, having to confront or to deal with that can be really difficult because you're challenging somebody who actually doesn't want to be challenged, doesn't accept that they can be wrong.
Yes.
And so it's really important that people understand what they need for themselves in that situation. How are they able to protect themselves from that sense of control and domination? And how are they able to step back? How are they able to manage their own feelings, their own reactions, the way that they interact with that person in that minimizes the potential damage that can be done? Because it's not your role to change your manager's personality. You can't. That's what our role is as psychotherapists. They go to therapy.
Yes.
If they recognize that they have an issue and want to change it. It's for the individuals themselves to look at, how can I navigate this dynamic in a way that's not going to be damaging for me?
Yes,
and so
exactly.
it's about making very conscious choices about how you engage, when you engage, how you set your boundaries, how you communicate, and how you then have support as well for that.
Well, thank you, Caroline. I think you're spot on. I think setting boundaries in these types of situations is one tool you can use, which can help you. But it's so hard, right? Depending if you're in a job and you need it and you don't have any option to another job, well, you're going to have to like manage that situation as best as you can. But I would say if you have an option, then probably best to leave that work situation, which is maybe not, but that's something I would do.
Yeah. And sometimes it does come to that when people are in that situation, not just with a dominant, difficult, damaging manager, but when they're suffering from harassment, discrimination, bullying, inequity, then they can challenge that. They can try to do their best to prove themselves, to see whether that can change. But in the end, it comes to a point, at what cost to me, to my mental health, my well-being, my social and professional development. And then you have to make a conscious choice. Do I stay and continue to try to live in this and progress in this environment, hoping that things will change, or do I make a conscious decision to leave?
Yes, thank you, Caroline. We have a comment coming in from Ethel Kango. Thank you, Ethel, for watching. The world is in dire need of leaders who are ethical and empathetic, and everyone needs a person who can lead them by the hand. And I think I couldn't agree more. So thank you, Ethel, for that beautiful comment. And then we have another comment. I can't see your name. Apologies. He or she says, thank you very much for bringing up this topic. As a teacher in Denmark and have a leader with narcissistic behavior is a valid problem when it comes to working with kids. I think not just with kids. I think having a leader with narcissistic behavior in any work situation won't help you or the organization. So thank you for that comment. I hope our discussion about this topic could help you. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat or send us a private message and we can see what we can do. Do you guys want to respond to this comments? Do you have some insights to share?
I'd like to add something very, very short. That it is the work that we do, together with Caroline. It's based on everything that she has said, everything that we've been discussing. But we also work on another level. So we have two levels in this situation. The level of the topic assistance, what we can do for the people in need, trapped in a system that is not working anymore, but is there. But at the same time, we need to create the world we want to live in. It is a kind of responsibility that we feel really inside of us. How we can prepare the leaders of the future, how we can prepare the corporates of the future, in which kind of planet we want to live in. Every single piece of awareness of the things that are not going right, it's perfect because it is the beginning. And then we can analyze, okay, which is the right direction to go through. And then when we arrive to a new goal, it's like a new beginning. We can create a better world. It's not just to sit down and say, okay, I have this narcissistic boss and this. Of course, that's horrible. That's a situation that many people, most of us, face or have faced in our lives. And of course, we have possibilities. But we also need to concentrate in which kind of society we want to create for ourselves and the rest of the humanity, even when we will not be here anymore. So it's an important thing to think about. Change the things that are not working anymore.
Yes, I think that's very beautifully said, Mason, and I'm so happy to hear that you and Caroline are working on this. It's making the world a better place, right? And it's creating that environment for the future generation that we want. And I think that's just beautiful. The same person, the teacher, I think from Denmark, I don't know, says you cannot leave your position as a teacher for the sake of the children if the principal has narcissistic behavior. I think that's a very difficult position to be in because on one hand, I'm sure you don't know how to cope with this situation. On the other hand, you feel such a responsibility for the children, right? Now, we talked about some tools that you can have in these kinds of situations, really setting boundaries, really having clear communications on what is your task and what not, if you have this type of principal or manager or executive above you. So I hope this helps you. And again, if you need any more advice, please send us a private message, and then we will try our best to help you with this. So thank you for your comments. And we have some great insights shared on this topic. I've heard many things come by. Bring your whole self to work. I think it's very beautiful because you cannot put your trauma or your problems in the cupboards and then go off to work. It just doesn't work that way. Organizations need to have a system in place, actually a first aid kit for mental health problems on the prevention side, but also on the reaction side. If that raises, then they know how to help their people and their teams. So if I make a round with you, can you please share your number one insights for mentally healthy, inclusive work cultures that will help organizations? Ashok, if I can start with you.
Well, I'm always going to say empathy. And I think that empathy for me is, and I'm hoping I'm not stealing thunder here, but for me, empathy is where it's at, because it is understanding where somebody else is at. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom would say, I'm cold, so you have to put a sweater on. And I was always overheating. And it wasn't that she wasn't empathic, it's that she didn't want me to get a nasty cold. But empathy really is not about thinking about what you think is right for you. It's really thinking what might be right for somebody else. And that can be practiced. Empathy is not something that's static. You can actually learn to be more empathic in the same way you can go to a wine tasting class and smell and taste more in a glass of wine. So I think empathy is teachable. And I run courses and try to do this all the time. But I think that's my number one infusion into what should happen. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ashok. And you didn't steal my thunder, but I 100% agree with you on empathy. I think that is the number one quality to have as a colleague, as a manager, as a leader, and also in your home situation, the number one quality to have. Caroline, what is your number one tool or tip to create mentally healthy, inclusive work cultures?
Yeah, for me, actually, you did steal a little bit of my thunder because, of course, empathy is crucial to our human connection and experience. And without that, we have no compassion, we have no understanding, and we have conflicts. And frankly, we are lost without empathy. As human social beings, we need that. It is crucial, but also connection with others. How do we connect and support each other in a way that's going to bring us all forward and support us? And the one thing that I would say is, in protecting your mental health, start from a position where you are valued, that you recognize that you deserve respect, and that you deserve to be in a space that is safe and that you are protected and that you have the right to expect that and to set boundaries and to make choices that are in your interests, that make you safe and healthier. And that includes everything about your culture and your diverse background. And if you start from that place, then I think that that is a good navigation for the choices you make in life to make sure that you are healthy.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful advice. Maiten, over to you. Your number one tool or tip to create mentally healthy, inclusive work culture.
I guess it's awareness, which is not easy. It takes time, it takes work, it takes courage. But without awareness of the outside, the circumstances, the culture, the situations, and self-awareness, what is going on inside, what is happening inside, who we are. Again, no judgment. It is what it is, who we are, how we can connect, as Caroline said, how we can connect with the outside. Without awareness, it is impossible, because what we build is a lot of things, even connections, based on the self, based on a self which is inauthentic, based on something that is not real.
Yeah.
So again, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time. We need to create a space to be able to see what it is, and using this as the base of everything.
Thank
And
you
this
so much.
includes respect. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maiten. All very valuable advices from the three of you. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I would really like to add to have self-love, which is actually also what you said, Caroline, because having self-love, love yourself first. That's where you need to start. And if you are somewhere in an organization or in your family, right, always do what's right. Always do what is ethical, because this is also something in difficult situations what you will be remembered for. If you work somewhere as a leader, you treat people well, you treat them right. Years later, they will still remember you, and they will maybe also use you as some kind of measure to know what do they deserve in the workplace. And that can have such a beautiful ripple effect. So always do what's right would be my number one advice in mentally healthy, inclusive work culture. It was such a pleasure to talk to you three today about this topic. I'm very honored to have such beautiful professionals by my side sharing this with the world. So thank you so much for your expertise, for your values. It was fantastic. And I really hope to have you guys back in the future, because I felt we had a lot to talk about and we are not done yet.
Thank you, Tisha. Thank you.
Most welcome. Well, we are back in another 2 weeks with an episode of the Balance and Empathy Show, and we have a very interesting topic and a very interesting guest on 2 weeks. We will see you then. Thank you so much. Bye.